Hey, welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. Are you on spring break yet? The weather's kind of nice outside. It's warm, even though I got this coat on. You know, weather always changes in Austin and Texas. You got to be ready for that. Just like the legislative session. I say all the time that you want to think about what is the legislative session like and working at the Capitol. Hurry up and wait, okay? Hurry up and wait. You never know what's going to happen. People are like, hurry up, we got to go to this meeting. Then you get there and they're like, oh, wait, we're not starting yet. Everybody stop. Have a seat. We're not sure. There's always kind of things. As a matter of fact, one of the greatest examples of that, if you ever see a meeting notice at the Capitol, okay, for the start of a Senate committee hearing or House committee, sometimes you'll see 10 a.m. or upon adjournment. What does that mean? Like what? What are you talking about? So when the House or the Senate conclude their business or stop for the day, they call that adjournment, right? Somebody, hits a gavel and says, we're adjourned, right? Court's adjourned, whatever, okay? So what that means is the committee hearing will start either at 10 a.m. or the time when the House or Senate adjourns or stops their business for the day. But it's even really not that clear, okay? That's not even an accurate description because here's what will happen, okay? The legislature schedule is that they meet, let's just say the House, on the House floor at 10 a.m. That's when they start, okay? Well, then you have a committee hearing that says the committee hearing starts at 10 a.m. or upon adjournment. Okay, well, how could the committee hearing start at 10 if they're supposed to go on the floor? All of the members have to be on the House floor. They can't be in committee at 10. I've never really understood that, but that's what they'll do, right? So it's kind of tricky. So it's not going to start at 10. When it says, if the legislature starts at 10 and then the committee hearing says 10 a.m. upon adjournment, I guess that means if they change the floor schedule and they don't start at 10, that hearing would start at 10, but I've not recall that ever really happening, okay? But that's another example of, hurry up, wait. You never know kind of what the moving parts are at the state capitol, and things can change quickly. That's why we have a member of our team at the state capitol every day of the legislative session. We're the only faith and family organization that does, and that's been our track record since the beginning. So we're ready for whatever they throw at us. And we're going to be ready for whatever they throw at us tomorrow. Tomorrow, March 6th, Thursday, is Texas Faith and Family Day, the most important day at the Texas Capitol during the legislative session. People will ask me all the time, when's a good day to go? If I'm only going to go one day, when should I go? Tomorrow. That's your best day. Thursday, March 6th, Texas Faith and Family Day is going to be a fantastic day. Incredible speakers, okay? You're going to hear from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Riley Gaines, Dr. Heim, who almost went to jail for 10 years for telling the truth about sex change issues on kids from Texas Children's Hospital, Senator Angela Paxton, Tom Oliverson, our great guests that we're about to have, Les Bernal. Check it out, texasfaithandfamily.com. We will start at 9 a.m. The Lieutenant Governor will be there at 9 a.m. Do not be late, and we'll have lunch with Chick-fil-A tomorrow. Speaking of Texas Faith and Family Day and Les Bernal, look who's on the screen. The National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling is Les Bernal, and he's going to be our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Now, Les and I have got to spend some time together. He spoke at our policy event in the fall. We met at an event that our collaboration of family policy councils through the Family Policy Council Network and Family Policy Alliance had last summer, and the timing was perfect because we knew that the issue of gambling was going to take center stage and be a big deal this legislative session, and sadly, that is the case. But that's why we've got to know Les. He knows a lot about these issues, and we're going to talk about that some today. Les, welcome to the Texas Values Report.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm glad you made the trip from New York, right?
I'm from Boston.
Boston. Okay. Sorry about that. Close. I don't lump everybody together up there, okay? Just so you know. And I'm a baseball fan. I like the Red Sox and the Yankees. I'm not so sure I'm a Mets fan because they beat my Astros many years ago when they used to play each other a lot in the playoffs. But that's okay. So you're in town, though. You're ready. You're going to be at the event tomorrow. And there's been a lot of activity on the issue of gambling in the state. There was a hearing on our lottery commission a week or two ago. I know we're mainly concerned, or one of the bigger concerns is about casino gambling coming into Texas. But there are a lot of different versions that gambling could take. I know you've been sort of paying attention to Texas. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your work, how you got into it, and then we'll get into the meat of this topic.
Sure. So Stop Predatory Gambling is a national nonprofit organization. We're in all 50 states. We pull from all political stripes, from the political right and the political left. And our mission is really to spotlight the truth about commercialized gambling operators and the harm that they're causing millions and millions of Americans, including hundreds of thousands of Texans. But as well as also spotlight for you, the non-gambler, like if you don't ever play the lottery or go to a casino, like you're suffering harm from this as well. Financially, your family suffering, and overall, the state is suffering for what's happening. So our goal is to reveal the truth about this industry and prevent more victims. And I will say, in terms of how I got hooked on this issue, I would summarize it with this kind of the small democratic principle, meaning small d democratic principle, and that is, if you're in second grade, you learn about no taxation without representation, right? It's one of our core democratic principles. Today in our country, including Texas, in pretty much any state that you live in, we have a system of government where we have a system of taxation by exploitation, right? State like Texas is selling $100 scratch-off tickets, all right, to its citizens, exempt from truth in advertising regulations. They talk about other states they have casinos and laundromats. This isn't true for Texas, but like Illinois has casinos and laundromats in every bar and tavern, every breakfast place in the state. So commercialized gambling, advertising, and marketing has become the public voice of government to citizens in Texas and across our country. Gambling is what we advertise to the American people more than anything else, and what we incentivize the American people. It shapes our character.
No,
that's why whether you gamble or not, you pay for this.
Tell us your website.
It's stoppredatorygambling.org.
So I said this when I was at the Capitol yesterday. I was testifying on a piece of legislation, and this is a principle that I think stretches across the board. Certainly in this case, the law is a teacher, right? Whatever the law says is okay has a big impact on what people decide to do. All right. So if gambling's legal, if there's a casino or a slot machine or whatever in the laundromat, that's the government saying, we think this is okay. This is like good idea, really, right? You should do more of it, right? They're advertising, and that has to tell you something, right? If they're spending so much money advertising, trying to convince you to do this, it at least should suggest that maybe a lot of people don't agree with that. If you've got to work so hard on them to convince them to do it more, there's a lot we could get into on that. Let me jump back for a second, though. You tour around the country and talk about the concerns, the negative impacts, how devastating gambling can be on people individually, but also collectively in a community, a society, and so on. Our legislature meets every 2 years. You may have been here 2 years ago. I don't remember. Might have crossed paths. Tell me, from what you can tell, from your vantage point, what do things look like in Texas right now? And what do you believe is happening at the state legislature in regards to gambling?
Well, of any state in the country, Texas remains a state that has the biggest bullseye on its back from the gambling industry. In the eyes of the gambling industry, the state of Texas is, and I'll put this in quotes, underserved. You don't, in their eyes, you don't have enough gambling. Even though you have a lottery selling $100 scratch-off tickets, they want you to have casinos across your state. They want to have online gambling in every home, every dorm room, any state that has, any community that has a home that has a smartphone connection. So Texas is really the last state in this country, the biggest remaining state that doesn't have most of the extreme forms of gambling that other states do. And that's something you should be proud of and fight like heck to keep them out.
But that probably suggests that there's a lot of focus on getting that done in Texas and flipping that, if you will, or changing, things in Texas to be, since it's the last sort of holdout, right? That there's been a lot of pressure on Texas. As you mentioned, it's got the biggest bullseye on it. We have a short legislative session, compared to maybe some other states, 140 days, 5 months every other year. And so be a lot of focus and a lot of pressure and a lot of efforts to try to change that. We've got to have a constitutional amendment to really have anything that I guess people would consider significant. I think all forms of gambling should be illegal in the state of Texas. But nonetheless, to get to the casino and some of those things related to that, I would think you'd need a constitutional amendment in Texas. That's a high bar, particularly in the House. But they passed some version of a bill like this 2 years ago that allowed for some of these things and got those 100 votes. And so it certainly could happen again. And look, it's around us, right? I mean, Louisiana's got casinos. Oklahoma's got casinos. The guy that owns a lot of those in Louisiana or has some connection to him, Tillman Fertitta, owns the Houston Rockets. He owns the Landry's restaurants. He would love to, create these destination resorts, as they like to call them, to try to convince you that there's nothing wrong with them and that there's, something family friendly about them. And, I'm hearing rumblings of, the new owner of the Dallas Mavericks, right? That that family's got some connection to the gambling and casino industry. The city of Irving, I'm hearing, is going to be having a meeting to vote on some of these things pretty soon. That's right next to Dallas. You heard about any of this stuff, by the way, that I'm talking about?
Yeah, we're very involved in all of this. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Tell me what you think's going on.
I think there's a massive lobbying campaign by one of the most powerful gambling companies in the world, which is Sands Casino. When you said the Dallas Mavericks, so Miriam Adelson, who's the widow of Sheldon Adelson, that's the Sands Casino company. So they own the Dallas Mavericks. They want to open a massive casino in Texas, and they want to ideally have, and a few other big players want to break in here as well, because this is like one of the last remaining markets where the casino industry has not been able to break into. So, and we talk about the power they're putting into this. There's probably at least more than 200 lobbyists registered to lobby for the gambling industry for the Texas legislature in this session.
Well,
so that's why Texas values in your members are so important, because your members have the power to stop this if they get involved and they stand up to those 200 lobbyists.
Well, look, and there's a saying at the Capitol that it's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass it, but that doesn't really mean it is easy, okay? There's some pieces of legislation that are very difficult to kill, that are very difficult to stop, to defeat. And every session, it gets harder and harder to sort of hold back, this avalanche and this, pressure like a dam that's about to break here from a waterfall, if you will. And look, I don't like to admit that. I mean, I would hope that it wouldn't be that difficult, and we were sort of not on that verge, but you got to be honest with people in this type of work so they know what we're up against and they don't take anything for granted. And there are versions of gambling already in Texas. Doesn't mean those are okay, right? You've got greyhound dog tracks, you've got horse tracks that never really have made any money from what I can tell. You've got, as you mentioned, the lottery and other different things. A lot of those were promised to be, this is going to create all this money and revenue for, public education. We see those people every year asking for more money, saying it's not enough. And so, but we're going to hear a lot of those arguments and a lot of that pressure. Now what we're going to hear is, this is a good business thing. It's going to bring revenue to Texas. I was just in the governor's office the other day, and he literally has all these trophies that he's gotten over consecutive years because Texas is one of the best states for business. We don't need any help from the Sands community or family or whoever owns that entity. So we know that Texas is sort of under siege, if you will. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of focus. What are some of the strongest arguments, though, that you've seen in other states that work or resonate, with people that thought they had their mind up and they go, wait a minute, I'm not so sure about this now?
Yeah, so there's several of them, and we're going to touch on these tomorrow. But
yep.
As it relates to specifically casinos, one of them for sure is to take on the idea that somehow a casino is a job creator. Casinos are not job creators. They are what they are addict creators. And by that I mean, if you go to a state like Pennsylvania, which has 10 casinos now across their state, there's more people who have self-excluded themselves from the casinos. People who have voluntarily banned themselves because they're addicted to the casinos. Then there's people who work at the state's casinos full-time and part-time jobs. And the people that actually ever ban themselves, that self-exclude, like that's just the tip of the iceberg. 90% of the people addicted to gambling never come forward for help. So casinos are addict creators, and that destroys families and destroys family finances. but it causes incredible dysfunction for all communities. We all pay for the suffering, the human misery this causes.
Well, look, and I'm not one to think that it's inevitable. At some point, there are going to be casinos and full-blown gambling in Texas. But if that were to ever happen, we can go back to these things and tell people, look, we warned you. Okay, and we've been at this work for 20 years, pushing back against efforts to expand gambling in Texas and things of that nature. And so people will say what they want, but it'll be difficult for people to say, oh, I didn't know, or I didn't think it was going to be that bad. They make up excuses or whatever the case may be. And we don't want to be in that position, right? We want to be able to make it, to say we did everything we could to notify people this is a bad idea. There's not going to be any value in it. Even if there was, it would be so short-lived that you'd hardly even notice, and there would be such negative consequences on the backside of that, right? And we can't take these things for granted, right? I mean, I'll walk around and, hear some lobbyists say, oh, it's probably not going to pass this session. I don't believe any of that talk, but I think people want folks to believe that and not to take it seriously. But I tell you what, there's people in the Dallas area that it got their attention, whether or not they were paying attention or not. You talked a little bit about the government in your comments. One of the things I heard you say, and you're right, come to Texas Faith and Family Day tomorrow. Les is going to be speaking. He'll say more about this issue than we're going to cover here. There's still time. That event starts at 9. From 9 to 1 p.m., we're going to be at the Texas Public Policy Foundation building. In the morning, we're going to have lunch there. Then we're going to walk over to the state capitol. It's just 2 blocks away. And we're going to work with you to make sure you can meet your House and Senate member and get our message across on these issues. But one of the things I've heard you say before, Les, is that, there's liability issues for the state. If the state says that gambling's okay, even though there are studies after studies that say it's addictive, it can be, all these detrimental effects that come from it, right? If the state knows that and they participate in this, they could be opening themselves up to some very costly class action lawsuits, which could be really crippling for our economy. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, not so much the companies themselves. The government has kind of been insulated from this, which is a challenge because they essentially have legalized this product. It's like when you have government like Texas regulating gambling, and I put that in quotes because they don't really regulate this to protect you, the citizen. They're regulating it to make sure the state gets its money. But when we put government in charge of the gambling industry, it's like putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank, right? It's driven by greed and a lust for political power from a handful of public officials from both parties. So in terms of the litigation piece, that's one of the challenges we face, is because this industry, gambling industry, is treated differently than any other industry in America. They get a free ride. So part of the challenge is how you're going to pay as a taxpayer may not necessarily be through cost of litigation, but you're going to pay higher taxes over the long term because of this, because predatory gambling is the ultimate budget gimmick, but you're also going to experience a far worse economic condition because all the money that people lose gambling, like there's no economic impact from that. The economic impact of a casino in your region is like pulling out $100 bill, throwing it onto the street, and then paying somebody a minimum wage to pick it up. It's just a sterile transfer of wealth. And so that's why you pay in this even if you don't play. And aside from all the human misery this industry causes, it's also going to cost you financially.
Well, let's talk about the name of your organization and help people understand that. When you say predatory gambling, what does that mean?
So the way I define it first is define what predatory gambling is not, right? And this isn't necessarily an endorsement of these other forms of gambling. Sure. It's just saying what predatory gambling is not. So predatory gambling is not, the Friday night poker game with the guys from work. It's not a friendly wager on the golf course with your friends. It's not the March Madness bracket, or if you have an office pool at the Super Bowl, or even I'm Catholic, it's not even the Catholic Church bingo. All right, it's not.
It's not
social forms of it.
It's not the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, saying, "Hey, the governor of Oklahoma, whoever wins the Texas OU game, we swap barbecue."
Well said. That's social gambling. Exactly. Those are social forms of gambling.
We're not endorsing those, but there is a big difference.
Yeah, but absolutely, those are social forms of gambling. Predatory gambling is when these powerful gambling corporations partner with state government to openly exploit and defraud citizens and communities. It's running gambling as a business. And when you run gambling as a business, unlike any other business in the world, there's an inherent predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and its customer. Like they're trying to take you down.
Well, you mentioned this earlier. Why would a slot machine be in a laundromat?
Well, because the government, they want people who's going to a laundromat, right?
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't own their own home, generally a lower income person.
Yeah, maybe
waiting,
struggling, down on their times, desperate.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, and they actually call them. I actually use images of this because it's so appalling. Anyone with a conscience, it has to be like they call them wash and wins.
Wow.
The idea that you're going to the laundromat to wash your laundry and you end up losing your whole paycheck.
Well, and look, there's no shame in using a laundromat. I'm not trying to talk, negatively about people that use that service, but I do think that is oftentimes the perception, and that may, in fact, be the reality, right? A lot of people, and the way I look at it is, a lot of times people that are, in that demographic or whatever, they don't have a lot of extra money, and so they're even more vulnerable. And that's the way it comes across to me. Oh, we're going to put these things here in, a place where people are a little bit more vulnerable and they might, maybe not make the best decisions or maybe try to, get rich quick or something like that. And so it comes across to me, there are other work we do where I see people that are involved in not so kind activities that place themselves in certain communities. And the way it comes across to me, they know, those people we can either, convince more or, they're more vulnerable. And, which adds to the reasons why these things are such a bad idea. We're halfway through our legislative session. That doesn't mean a lot has happened. So it's not, we're sort of halfway on the time scale or the time spectrum. But a lot happens in the last, 4 to 6, 8 weeks, if so, more so with the legislative session. So things could happen really quickly. Look, I hear if something's going to pass, it would be in the House that, the gambling industry is going to run into a big brick wall in the Senate. But, that's what I hear. I mean, who knows? I mean, but it's concerning even if something passes the House because it's something that people use as momentum. So I'm always of the view of, kill the bill as early as you can.
Yeah, Texas is a serious threat. So they're going to have all this. The gambling industry is going to have all kinds of messaging to try to confuse people and what they're voting on, and who's going to. You have to take. This is as serious a threat in your legislative cycle right now as any other issue. Like this is a major issue, and it's going to be that way until you soundly defeat this issue. And build a strong coalition here, which I know Texas Values is at the point of the spear on this, and I appreciate your leadership on this. You need to soundly defeat this industry. There's no grassroots movement for this in Texas. This is all about driven by greed, and the fight what this really fight is at its core is it's a fight of love versus greed. God calls us to love our neighbor like He loves us. This industry is about loving yourself more than your neighbor.
Listen,
exploiting your neighbor.
Les is going to have more to say about this at Texas Faith and Family Day tomorrow, Thursday, March 6th, one of the biggest, most important, and valuable days during the legislative session. We're going to try to make as most of it as we can for you, for the people that are coming. We got buses coming from Dallas and Houston, and even my mom's coming, okay? A lot of good people that'll be there. I'm looking forward to it. And, of course, our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, is going to kick the event off at 9 o'clock. Don't be late. Les Bernal will be there later on in the program, and then we're all going to head over to the Capitol and make our voices heard. Les, thanks for all the work you're doing. I'm glad you made it safely into Texas. I look forward to seeing you at our event tomorrow, and thank you for being our guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Thank you. My privilege.
All right, I just got a minute or two left, I think, to wrap up. And, busy week last week. I was in Grapevine in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for NRB, National Religious Broadcasters Convention. Had a fantastic booth, a lot of great interviews. You probably saw some of them. Just some, phenomenal people. Some friends of mine, too, that are involved in some work that we got to do some interviews with that sometimes are on the other side of the camera or they're doing interviews of their own. That was a lot of fun, and got to spend time with people I'd never met before. People, we've got a great interview, by the way, coming out from Christian Broadcast Network, CBN, on the Texas Ten Commandments case. I was able to do that interview there on site at the Gaylord Texan, but I came back in town, testified in Senate Education Committee. I was in Senate Education Committee yesterday. We were in State Affairs Committee on Monday. I think State Affairs meets again tomorrow. I think there's at least one big bill over there. Plenty of activity at the state capitol. But we're going to try to catch our breath for a few minutes tomorrow and get everybody together, get the team back together, get the family, all the good people, okay? Hundreds of people will be at Faith and Family Day tomorrow. We're starting at Texas Public Policy Foundation's building, their amphitheater on the first floor. We're going to load you up with some good information from the Lieutenant Governor, different issues, Senator Paxton, Dr. Tom Oliverson, Dr. Heim, the doctor who was going to go to prison for 10 years for telling the truth about sex change operations on kids in Texas. The Biden administration didn't make it, all right? They ran out of time. They lost their election. Trump came in and had those charges dropped against Dr. Heim. By the way, he was in the audience of the address before the House and Senate, the joint session of Congress by President Trump last night. Did you see the speech? I mean, it was kind of a long speech, if you will. You know, for those of you who are not used to some of these addresses, he went like an hour and 45 minutes, but was packed with all kinds of incredible stuff. Some great shout outs and mentions to some incredible people from Texas. Our friend, Riley Gaines was there, who's going to be a part of the event tomorrow at Texas Faith and Family Day. Man, she's always in the right places, isn't she? And so excited for her. Peyton McNabb, somebody we've worked with, an athlete that has suffered some really difficult trauma and physical pain and so on from the Save Women's Sports issue, being on the victim side of that. You know, just some incredible. The little boy, DJ, well, he's 13, that got recognized in cancer survivor. He's from Texas. You know, and just the heartbreaking story that we continue to hear about. The mother of Jocelyn, the young girl who was murdered by an illegal alien in Houston. The details are so graphic, it's hard to even think about and bring up again. But those people and different other people got recognitions that are really important part of what's going on right now, and a lot about the direction of where the Trump administration is going on the issues we care about. So much to talk about that speech. But Texas Faith and Family Day is tomorrow. We're excited about all the great speakers, elected officials, issue people. I think the young lady who had the man go into her restroom in the capital of Texas, the Capitol staffer, I think she's going to be there. Listen, we got plenty for you, and I think we're going to live stream a lot of it, but please try to come to the event, and there's Chick-fil-A lunch at noon. TexasFaithAndFamily.com. You can get the ticket. It's $5. You can still get on the bus. It's $1, people, to take a bus from Dallas or Houston, okay? We got a little late start on the buses, so we're sorry about that. So we decided, drop it almost to free so we can try to encourage more people to get on the bus. That's real easy. I'd love to be riding the bus to work tomorrow, because that would be cozy, all right, and comfortable. And then, you can have a nice meal and, call it a day on the bus on the way back home. I've made that drive from Dallas to Houston several times, and I like the drive. Like I enjoy it, if you will. But there are so many times where I wish somebody else was driving. So that's tomorrow. We're starting sharp. Get there before 9. It's hard to park around the area where we're having this meeting in Capitol if you're not on the bus. Okay, so you've been fair warned. Get there early. Don't miss the Lieutenant Governor at 9, and a lot of great people and a lot of great day we're going to have. Listen, you see value in our work. These events are not free for us. We do have costs. Please consider making a donation at txvalues.org. And that's how together we can protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.